Hello, podcast fam. I am thrilled to share some exciting news. My book, Sow, Grow, Lead, is officially live on Amazon. This book is more than just my story of starting a nonprofit and building a peanut butter factory in Malawi. So trust me, the ups and downs of that journey are worth the read. It's also packed with practical strategies to help nonprofit leaders like you tackle challenges with clarity, courage, and a whole lot of heart. If you've ever wondered how to turn your vision into reality, navigate the inevitable hurdles, and build something meaningful, whether in your organization or in your own life, this book is for you. I'd be so grateful for your support in spreading the word. Grab your copy of Sow, Grow, Lead in the show notes and on Amazon today. Let's keep sowing seeds of impact together. Welcome to the Lead with Heart podcast, which is dedicated to nonprofit leaders who are passionate about making a difference. I'm your host, Haley Cooper, and I'm thrilled to have you join us on a journey of growth, inspiration, and transformation. At Lead with Heart, we believe that leading with heart means embracing empathy, compassion, and authenticity in every aspect of our work. It's about putting people first, fostering genuine connections, and creating a positive impact that goes beyond numbers and metrics. In the nonprofit world, it can often feel like we're carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders. The challenges are immense, and the road can be lonely. But here, you're not alone. This podcast is a community where we support each other, share our stories, and learn together. Each episode will dive into personal and professional development topics tailored specifically for nonprofit leaders. From innovative fundraising strategies and effective team management to self-care practices and leadership insights, we're here to provide you with practical strategies that you can apply to your life and work. My goal is to empower you, elevate your leadership, and engage your heart in all that you do. I want to help you navigate the unique challenges of the nonprofit sector with confidence and resilience, so you can continue to create meaningful change in the world. So whether you're driving to a meeting, taking a break, or winding down for the day, tune in and join us on this journey. Together we'll discover what it truly means to lead with heart. Thank you for being here. Let's dive in. Well, everyone, welcome back to the Lead with Heart podcast. This is your host, Haley Cooper. And today we are joined by someone who's been at the forefront of global change, compassion, and connection, Neil. He is the former CEO of SOS Children's Village USA and now serves as a senior advisor to the Ousri Family Foundation. He also is the author of a powerful new book, Do More Good, a #1 new release that has already earned praise from leaders like President Bill Clinton, Sherry Blair, and even features a foreword by His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. At a time when America and the world feels increasingly divided, Neil offers a roadmap for building bridges through shared values, purpose, and compassion. His work spans continents and causes, and his stories include lessons from global icons like Malala, Mother Teresa, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, John McCain, and Jose Andres. Through his Building Bridges column and his life's work, Neil challenges us to take daily action towards unity. Whether it's confronting extremism, empowering youth, or learning how to lead across difference, Neil's voice is exactly what we need right now. Welcome to the podcast, Neil.
I'm delighted to be here. Thanks for inviting me. Thank you, Haley.
So obviously in your intro, your work spans continents, causes, and conversations with some of the world's most remarkable leaders. For those maybe meeting you for the first time, how would you describe who you are and what drives the work that you do?
Haley, I think the best way to describe myself is I'm a bridge builder. I think that's how I define myself. It just so happened I worked in nonprofit for many years. I also worked in private sector. I also worked as a U.S. government contractor, and I had a top secret clearance from the U.S. Defense once upon a time. And I also worked with the Australian government. So my career is anything but linear. But I have to admit to your audience and to you, and that's a full admission, that nothing gave me more pleasure, my time in the international development and nonprofit world, because I think that's what shaped my value system. I think it also put together what I learned in many different sectors. I learned accountability in private sector. I learned the importance of partnership and global context when I was with the Australian government as a trade commissioner. I learned entrepreneurship. I started many companies. I failed many times, but I also succeeded a few times. But I was able to bring all of those things to the nonprofit world, and that made one of the most fulfilling moments for me. So thank you. Thank you for asking that.
That's a beautiful story. And I want to talk a little bit and ask you about this question because you did mention, you failed some businesses as you started. And I feel like, especially in the nonprofit world, we are really afraid of risk and we're really afraid of failure. So obviously, I think out of failure comes success, right? Like it's not necessarily a sign to stop going. It's just part of our growth process. So can you talk a little bit more about what that looked like for you?
Of course. I think maybe I got trained in that way before nonprofit. My early career was not in nonprofit. I was in private sector for some time. And I think if I look back in every organization I worked, I started an operation. Some of them are for-profit operations, some of them are non-profit operations. And many of them failed and some succeeded. I think the best advice is very hard to give advice because it's very contextual. Some of the common things we know, and I think particularly in nonprofit, I think the word you will hear again and again is resilience. And I think that kept me going. I think what also kept me going, I am sure you and your audience, that's what we are, is our passion. I always believe that passion and compassion must work together. One alone is not enough. You just cannot have just compassion. You have to be really passionate about what you're doing. So I think that kept me going. That helped me to get up many times. I think resilience, compassion, passion, and purpose. I talk a lot about purpose. And I think, as a matter of fact, the book you talked about, Do More Good, and the lessons I learned from some very well-known change makers, but some also, I will call them unsung heroes. The three pillars of the book is empathy, purpose, and action. And I think purpose really helped me to stay focused because I was very clear on my purpose. Of course, we can talk about from a very macro standpoint that if you look at any famous people we know, you and I know, that before they succeeded, they failed many times, from Abraham Lincoln to even if we talk about the CEOs of the world right now. So that's nothing new. But I think what I'm talking about, if you have the right empathy, right compassion, right purpose, and right resilience, I think you're in better shape than most people.
I definitely agree. And can you define or distinguish between what passion and compassion are and why both are important?
Sure, I would try my best. I think compassion, and maybe because I grew up at a home, well, I would take you back a little bit. Compassion and empathy is something I talk a lot about. I think there is some conversation about empathy being soft, and I fight back saying empathy is strategic. Empathy is purposeful. So I think for me, I grew up in a home where there was a lack of resources, but not a lack of empathy or compassion. I always joke around, my mother was a 24-hour empathy machine churning out empathy without even discriminating who the receivers are or whether they're giving empathy back or not. So I think on that note, I see compassion, empathy. It's something we feel for others, that we feel that there is something I need to do other than myself. And I think that part is there. And I distinguish that with passion, Haley, because compassion is good, but compassion alone, if I'm not passionate about something deeply in my heart, and that is where I think compassion can be very macro, passion is very micro. Let me explain what I mean by that. I have compassion for many things in life, from environmental issue to a person who needs help, to a variety of things I'm compassionate about. But my passion got to be much more focused, because otherwise I'll not be able to achieve any result. If I'm trying to do too many things, I'd end up doing nothing. So I think I kind of put passion in a more micro perspective. And this is where focus comes, that I am passionate about solving poverty in a certain area, or I'm passionate about fighting against child trafficking, I'm passionate about women's rights or civil rights. So I think that's the distinction. It's something very focused, something very macro, but you need the focus to get results and be laser focused about impact. Am I getting the result I'm looking for? I think that is what I'm distinguishing between compassion and passion. You need both. You need both.
Yeah, and I really like that definition. And I think that's important for the listeners and also people who volunteer, because I feel like a lot of people, yes, they care about a lot of issues, right? But it can almost stall their ability to take action if they can't find that passion and that laser focus. Because yes, then they'll dabble in a little bit of everything and they won't be as satisfied as if they really dive into their passion and commit to serving and seeing the impact in that capacity. And you've met and worked alongside some of the most inspiring leaders of our time, Mother Teresa, Jose Andres, and many more. What's one moment from those encounters that fundamentally changed how you see leadership or compassion?
I will answer that, Haley, but if I may, I want to dive a little bit deeper on the last conversation because I think it will help your listener. And the reason I want to do that, and I will come back to your question on one of the moment, I think they're interconnected when I talk about passion, purpose, and action, because you touched on it. You touched on it a bit in the last comment you made about action. And I will elaborate why I'm so passionate about action. Let me elaborate that. I think, of course, there is a X percentage of people in the United States working for profit, one in nonprofit. There are many sectors we work in. But I think the challenge most of us feel, and I'm now talking people even outside the nonprofit sector, with so much noise, so much division, so much disruption, most people feel very helpless. Just a human nature. I'm not talking now just nonprofit, my colleagues there, but I'm talking about people like your brothers, your sisters, your cousin, your parents. Mm-hmm. Most of them feel very helpless. So I try to talk this in deliberate way that you have to have empathy, because empathy then allows you to have purpose. And this is important to understand. And one of the things, a lot of people say, well, how do I get to my purpose? And I say, purpose doesn't scream, it whispers. And so if something whispers, if you are bombarded with so much noise, Haley, it's hard to hear it. Mm-hmm. I'm talking a lot about how do we come out of this noise? And it varies from individual to individual. Some people just take a walk. Some people can sit in a room. Some people go do yoga. Some people go for whatever their particular way is. But I am really talking about finding that purpose and pulling down the noise. Because other than we'll not be able to hear our purpose. Because we are so overwhelmed with noise, we don't get to hear it. And then the last thing I talk about there is action. And one of the reasons I took a lot more time to finish the book, and it's not very clear when you look at the cover, after every chapter, I listed names of nonprofit organizations that they can join, or they can volunteer, or they can donate. So I went through a very meticulous process and looked at what are the vetting agency in the United States. And there are 2 or 3 that vet the nonprofit world and give them ranking. Are they transparent? Are they doing good work? And there are some credible organizations that are doing that. And I really wanted to make sure that this book is not about you go and buy a book you feel good about and put it back on the shelf. That's not purpose. That's, again, you have that empathy and purpose. You have no action. I deliberately listed down many organizations, whether you care about child trafficking or you care about hunger or you care about environment, whatever your cause may be, whatever your purpose may be, you will find the name of the organization in the book. So I kind of want to mention that the Do More Good book has that list of organizations you can work on, so that these are all interrelated: purpose, empathy, purpose, and action. So I wanted to close the loop on that. Your question, it's not an easy one to answer, but I think what you are asking me, a particular moment that has impacted me. And it's a tough one to answer, but because I think, I can give you a couple of examples just to make a point. I met Malala, I think, the year after she was shot on the hand by some crazy person. And I don't think I ever felt so small in my life. That's the best way I can explain. I met her at a particular moment in New York, and I felt small in the sense that, wow, look at the courage to speak out. Look at the courage to take a stand. Look at the courage to give a voice to the voiceless. So I would say that is something I carry quite a bit, because a lot of time, even in my CEO role, I was not able to use my voice. I was afraid of my donor. I was afraid of offending somebody. I was afraid of many times, even as a CEO, I was not able to do justice to the voice conversation. I still struggle. Am I speaking everything in my mind? I'm not sure. I try. A lot of time I hold back for a variety of reasons. So I think that's a moment I look back and try to get courage on my own, that I need to have more courage, more clarity on my thought, so I can speak out that I really feel strong about. And then other things, Heli, I can talk about. When I met first time with Holiness Dalai Lama, who was so gracious, so kind to write. He wrote the foreword for my book. But again, it's an incredible moment of simplicity that we met him to talk about really girls, vulnerable girls in Africa. That was one of the focus when we met with His Holiness, 50 of us. And the way he explained that you have to have, and he talked a lot about compassion, as if somebody follows Dalai Lama, and he moved us to say, don't think about helping them. First, you have to understand the compassion in your heart about them and think about what they're feeling. Don't try to tell them what they need, but ask them what they need. In this, we struggle with nonprofit a lot because we always say, well, I already know what they need. And this is something I have looked at because I travel to East Africa, I travel to West Africa, I travel to Asia, and I travel in this country. SOS Children Villages, we have villages in Florida, we have villages in Chicago.
Oh, wow.
I've been to some of the toughest places in this country, let alone in some other country we talk about. And I think what I have learned, that there is a tendency for us to assume that we know the problem is. And that is simply not true. That we have to do a lot better job in asking and learning the local context instead of assuming that we know what the solutions may be. So those are the two moments. There are many, Heli, but I thought those are the two maybe meaningful to you.
Imagine a fundraising partner that not only helps you raise more money, but also supports you in retaining your donors. A partner that helps you raise funds both online and on location so you can grow your impact faster. That's DonorBox, a comprehensive suite of tools, services, and resources that give fundraisers just like you a custom solution to tackle your unique challenges, helping you achieve the growth and sustainability your organization needs, helping you help others. Visit donorbox.org to learn more. Wow, that is so beautiful. And I can imagine just the amazement at Malala, who was shot and then goes on to advocate for women. Like, that takes a lot of courage and bravery. And I know that Brene Brown says courage isn't in the absence of fear. So it takes a lot of courage and bravery to be able to do that. And I love what His Holiness advised her on too, because I think I've come across this, and I read about this in my own book when I did work in Malawi, Africa, coming in with a solution and being like, hey, this is how we do it in the West, so it has to be able to work here. But traditionally and culturally, a lot of that stuff didn't translate or didn't last very long because it didn't fit in with how they operated. We didn't necessarily have the solution. We had to ask the question, say, what do you need? And it wasn't necessarily what we thought. And then we had to pivot and adjust what we were doing and really work closely with the community, and so that we could make an impact, right? And have their buy-in and ownership. And so how can nonprofits cultivate more of that listening within the community and then taking action to really understand, instead of going into a place, starting a nonprofit, assuming what people need?
I will again answer it, but let me touch on a couple of things that I think is connected, but let me try on that. I think one of the things I talk about is nonprofit is not owned by anyone. I think that creates a little bit of I'm not calling it a challenge, but we have to be aware of it. And the reason we have to be aware of it because who is asking the tough question? Who is asking that, are we delivering the result or not? Because that brings back to the core of it, right? It's good for you and I to talk about it. It's great, but I'm actually going a little deeper that because of the structure of the nonprofit, who is responsible for asking those tough questions? Is it the CEO? Is it the board? Board keep changing. Is the chair of the board? So I don't have all the answer, but I'm to raise some question before I even answer your question that you asked me.
Good.
And there are other questions. Do we have the right financial structure? Are we sustainable? Are we needed? Can we work with another organization? Are we ethically run? Again, I'm not pointing at anything, but I'm just saying sometimes it's important to think about this because I spent almost 17 years in nonprofit. And I can tell you right now, there are many times I feel we're not doing exactly all the right thing. And of course, it's a constant process, but I think it allows me now. And one of the chapters in the book, I dedicated deliberately on governance, on good governance in nonprofit. Because what you asked is go at the heart of good governance in the nonprofit. And not to distract the conversation, but when you hear people outside the nonprofit sector, if I can call it nonprofit or international development, the amount of misinformation is mind-boggling, absolutely mind-boggling. Makes me very sad because some of them are my closest friend. The perception they have is heartbreaking to me. And they are not, they are very well-educated and knowledgeable human beings and well-meaning human beings, no lacking compassion than I do or you do. So I think there's another journey that the nonprofit leaders will have to take and to do a much better job in reaching out to people who are not in the nonprofit sector or international development sector. So they have a much better understanding how it operates. Now coming back to your question about what can be done, right? I think that's what you're asking. So in the book, I raised some of this question in that particular chapter. And then I said, the answer must come from within. He said, because there's nobody owns it, it must come from within. And what is within that? The within I talked about is, at the end of the day, it's a board, it's a leadership. And then I went on to say, and not just me, Casey and I talked a lot about this, along with other very senior nonprofit leaders, that this is much detailed than this podcast. We discussed quite a bit how a board should be structured, how often the board should change, what is the role of the board chair, what is the role of the board versus the CEO. So I don't think I have all the answers for you specifically, but I think that soul searching and having the right kind of leadership and the team, not just the leadership, doing the self-analysis is more important than a private sector or anything else, because there you do have a much better is the right word, but structured process of catching a mistake and making sure that, because it's all on shareholders' value. The shareholders are not value, well, then the CEO go out or the board leaves or something happens. Nonprofit don't have that. And that's the reason we have to be a lot more mindful of how we are operating. Does that make sense, Ellie, what I'm explaining? So I don't have a clear answer, but I think it's more of that than anything else. I can clearly say that this is it, one point that we have to do better. But yeah, that comes back to the leadership of the nonprofit.
I totally agree. And I think it does come with asking those tough questions that no one really wants to ask of themselves. But it does start with that and doing that inner, whether it's inner within yourself or inner within the context of your leadership or your board, really doing that self and group awareness of where the nonprofit stands, and also building out that transparency, because from what I understand, and especially here in Orange County, there was a huge lawsuit recently where people were saying they were going to put money into a charity, but really they were funneling it and buying a bunch of houses for themselves. And so I think that transparency and trust is critical in this day and age.
You can imagine, hold that thought for one moment, because I would dwell on it, 2 more minutes before we change the topic. You can imagine my cousin or my friend, not cousin, my friends right here, if they read the story you just talked about. And human nature, we judge and we put everybody in one basket immediately. They're no longer distinguishing from a good nonprofit to a not so good nonprofit. And that's I think we have to be very mindful of and make sure we catch them right away. And that's the reason I think I would mention for your readers, again, I'm sure there are others, but I go with the vetting agency I mentioned, and I'm recommending even the normal people who are just donating money, Charity Navigator, GuideStar, Charity Watch. These three I mentioned in the book. That is the one way to vet the nonprofit to make sure they're running in an ethical manner and a transparent manner. So,
when you talk about, for someone who might be new, and, I've sat on grant committees and boards where we have to train people how to read 990s and financials and things like that. What, with the organizations that you mentioned in your book, what qualifies as an ethical and transparent nonprofit? Is there like a top three that you would, like, as you go through your vetting process of how you would go about choosing to be involved with a nonprofit? Hey there, podcast family. If you're like me and deeply committed to improving your leadership skills and fostering better connections with your team, I've got something truly amazing to share with you. I'm proud to introduce the EMC Masterclass, something I talk about often as a certified trainer. It's an incredible program developed by the renowned Dr. Lola Gershfeld, an organizational psychologist and corporate emotional connection expert. You might remember her from a podcast episode where she shared invaluable insights into the world of emotional connection. Dr. Gershfeld's EMC Leaders courses are designed for anyone working with people, whether you're a manager, supervisor, team leader, educator, coach, mentor, or a team member. This program is truly for everyone looking to enhance their communication and collaboration skills to raise more revenue for their mission. Now, let me tell you why the EMC Masterclass is a game changer. Dr. Gershfeld's groundbreaking emotional connection process has been integrated into top universities' curriculum and recognized by international organizations like ICF, HRCI, and SHRM. Humans are wired to seek emotional safety, and when we feel safe, we're more likely to take risks, share innovative ideas, and collaborate effectively. The EMC process is the catalyst for creating that emotional safety within your team. The virtual EMC Masterclass consists of 8 modules with 4 hours of expertly recorded material, 13 quizzes to reinforce your learning, and a workbook filled with activities for offline practice and something I still refer to daily. Ready to become an emotional connection master? Dr. Gershfeld is offering an exclusive detail for our podcast listeners. Use the code LEADWITHHEART to enjoy a generous 10% discount on the EMC Masterclass. Head over to emcleaders.com and enroll in the EMC Masterclass today.
yeah, the reason I mentioned this name because there's not many other ways to do that. Of course, some people I know, my friend circle, they prefer local nonprofit. They can observe, they can be part of, they can touch and feel. But that's most of the time, that is not possible. Imagine now you keep extending the boundary to another state and now extend the boundary to another country. It's practically impossible to know where my money is going. So I think, let's start with the country first. I think for the reason I mentioned the 3 organizations I just did, they have certain factors. Do I agree with all the factors, Haley? Not necessarily. For example, I'll give you some specific thing. A nonprofit, there's a whole misperception of overhead. And this will take 3 podcasts. I'm not going to even dive into that.
Yeah.
But the point I'm trying to make is, if you look at the amount of money needed to train staff, I forget the data, so I'm not going to misquote a number, and the amount of money we spend in nonprofit on training versus in private sector, is a significant difference. So we are expecting the same level of skill, the same level of maturity, the same level of result, where we are not training, even a fraction of the money gets spent in for-profit versus non-profit. So I understand that, because that's something I can speak passionately and realistically. But saying all that, since we are under the constraint, I understand the need for overhead a lot more than people, because I lived through that. And I know some of the rating agencies looked at the overhead number. So that's the one I'm a bit fuzzy about. But that said, we have to go with something. So I think my best answer is, since you are really not able to visit, which is not practical in most cases, you have to go through the rating agency. I have a friend of mine who's a donor. He donates almost 20 organizations. He's done well in life and he donates to a lot of money. And he has a list and he regularly watches the credit rating I just mentioned. That is his way. And then other ways is get to know the people of the nonprofit a little bit more, depending on how much you're donating. If you're giving enough money, then I think it would be good to have some personal connection. If you're sponsoring a child to another country, if you're going to that country, I will say, I know sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes it's a hassle. But see if you can make a small trip or not. Those are some very rudimentary conversations. But getting to know the nonprofit at a personal level, read their annual report. I think that's a good one. I would strongly recommend reading the annual report and keep up with the newsletter, whatever you can find.
Yeah, and I think that's good advice for the nonprofit listening, right? To, on the other side, be able to provide that communication and transparency. And when you're talking about visiting your kid, I was sponsoring a kid through World Vision when I lived in Malawi, and I visited her in her village, and she was probably about 5 or 6. And then I told her family that I was going to bring my family, and they didn't believe me because they were like, no one ever comes back and visits us. So I went back and I brought my mom, I brought my dad, I brought my brother, and they were so surprised. And it was just nice to really understand the context within which they were living and build that rapport with them beyond just a monetary level, but really understanding.
That is, again, just so you know, Angelina Jolie, who is part of my book, also was one of the big sponsors of our child when I was CEO of SOS Children Villages. I know for a fact she visited. Of course, we have to keep it in a certain way so the visit is not advertised. So absolutely, I think it's something I'm very happy you did that, and I have so much respect. That is not about writing a check, it's about caring. That's what I was talking about. It's about caring, it's about feeling, it's about purpose, and be able to see the result of it. And I know this whole impact is thrown out here and there all the time, but I think all people will have to be constantly alert that am I getting the result we told our donor that we're going to get? And I know sometimes it takes longer, sometimes it's not that simple. Things happen. There is a place I was supposed to do this, there's a flood, there is a drought, whatever happened, and all my plan went haywire. And having that conversation with the donor is so critical. A lot of time I could not deliver what I told my donor that I would be able to do. And COVID was an extreme case, but other than COVID also, things happen. But you have to communicate with the donor clearly why. And I would say most of them understand.
Yeah, that makes sense. You talk a lot. I want to transition a little bit. You talk a lot about your column, Building Bridges. And I would love to dive a little bit more into what inspired you to start that column. I think it's such an important conversation in this day and age where there is so much division, and whether that can span a lot of things. But in the age of cancel culture and division and disunity, what inspired you to start Building Bridges?
I think what inspired me is some core belief, and it will start with that. I think if I take this country as a context, I can tell you right now that if people see two of us walking down the street, they will see a white lady, they will see a brown guy. Dig deeper, they might find out, I don't know exactly your religion, but most likely we come from a different faith. And they will dig deeper, they will find some differences. But what they will also find, if they really want to understand Haley and Neil, they will know that we both love our country. They will know we both love our family. They will know that we both love our neighbors and our friends. And they will, not knowing you, we just met 45 minutes ago, I can assure you that I feel that you deeply care about your environment, about people you work with, and you deeply care about this country, that both of us will do whatever we can to stand behind our country, if it comes to that. I think one other thing people have to understand, that unity does not mean uniformity. But this is a thing I'm repeating on a constant basis. Good. Unity does not mean uniformity. And you and I are a great example. I'm there and I'm talking about it all the time. And why goes much deeper, as I said. I think I can tell you stories where many years ago, some kids threw eggs at me because I look different. But at the same time, and the reason I'm sharing this, I have had amazing experiences, and I can share one very quickly, with people in this country from all color that are boundless empathy, boundless compassion. So I have a choice. Do I remember the story of the egg, or do I remember the story of those beautiful people doing amazing things to me and my son and my family? And the other answer will be, I know what division does. I have seen directly. I've been to many countries, not just here, in many parts of the world. I've seen misunderstanding and division, what can it do to people? Now come back to our nation. One of the things I say all the time, that you and I are very lucky. You were born in what is defined as the most powerful democracy in the world. I'm assuming you were born in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
I was born in India, which was by definition the most largest democracy in the world because of the population, right? So we have not experienced what it looks like to live in a democracy. And division is one of the ingredients to break the democracy. So I'm holding close to my heart the importance of democracy, because in a democracy is messy, democracy is slow, but it's the only form of government where Kelly and Neil have a voice, right? And we can speak our mind, we can have this dialogue that we are having. Hold that very close to my heart. So I think I'm very passionate about, I've seen what religious division, what political division can do. And one of the things I always say, that empathy is not a blue state value or a red state value or a purple state value. It's an American value. It's integrated in our system, in our being. So we have a job to find out, how do we bring that up? What conversation I can have with you. So you are no longer driven by the differences, but you are coming to me or having a conversation with me that we can agree on. And I think that's the path I have taken. And I write about it in my column, Building Bridges at Pathos. And the book, as I said, is one of the theme of the book is unity. I'm big into unity movement. I join a lot of organizations as we speak called Listen First, Braver Angels, Us United. Actually, the CEO of Us United is traveling the country as we speak and meeting the police sheriff from different state to bring us together. And I will meet him Monday, actually in Washington, D.C. So I am actually in that movement, and I'm joining anybody want to be part of that conversation, that how can we bring this country together? I deeply care about, because we love this country. And we have to make sure whatever we can do, we don't give up. Patriotism is not about perfection. It's work in progress. And if we care, that we want to make it better.
Yeah, I love that. And I think empathy is just a human need too, right? If you think about the Maslow hierarchy of needs, beyond food and shelter, we need connection, we need significance, we need belonging. And that starts with empathy. That starts with us being self-aware, but also being able to put ourselves in other people's shoes and understanding and having that emotional awareness and intelligence of how our relationships matter. And so I think that is an important piece when it comes to building bridges and the foundation of any relationship, remembering to come back to that empathy.
Yeah, the last comment I made on that, if you look back in history, I'm a big fan of Noah Harari, a book. And if you look at history, you will see thousands and thousands of years, the reason we survived, the reason humankind survived, because we are able to form community and trust. That is the basic of our survival, all the way as deep as you can see. One of the things makes human a little different from other animal, because of our ability to trust each other, because of our ability to form a community. If we lose that, we lose humanity.
Ooh, that is good. And a little bit more on that note, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and I'm also creating something in the next few months that creates that sense of community among leadership, because we know loneliness is an epidemic. We know that leaders especially feel lonely. So how can they start to build that sense of community? Because we can't do it alone. And like you said,
you can. And it's it's just a coincidence. I'm listening again to this Harari conversation, but I'm sure there are other people talked about this. I was just listening to him yesterday. And he says something along, I'm kind of paraphrasing, I suppose, that a lot of time we feel very helpless. Coming back to a little while ago, we talked about, we feel lonely, we feel helpless, we feel we just don't know what to do. Not just leaders. Think about if the leaders feel about common people, how they're feeling. The leaders, at least in a position of some kind of a power and influence, if the leaders is feeling that, it must be very hard for common people. So I think one of the things he suggested, and I totally supported, action, I believe everybody, irrespective of your nationality, irrespective of your ethnic background, irrespective of your financial background, we are all capable of making a difference. I am a strong believer of that. And I think action, no matter what small action might be, there's a term called generosity fuels personal growth and happiness. And there are scientific research done by Harvard and others that doing good actually also helps with loneliness and longevity. So one of the things I talk about in the book is doing small good, doing more good, whatever way you can, actually helps you to be part of doing something much bigger. And the other point I would mention is coming back to community. Join our organization. It's very difficult to do some of the stuff on your own. If there is an organization to join, and one of the things I also believe, if you can find one to join, form one, start one.
Yeah, and I think, again, when it comes to the nonprofit side, like, it's important to be able to create that community. When I worked in-house, there were a lot of individuals who had retired, and so they lost that sense of purpose of going to work every day, and then they become volunteer. And then COVID happened, and then they couldn't come volunteer. And again, they felt lonely. They felt like they had lost their little community that they would see, the friendships they had formed. And so we had to come up with this creative way to instill that same sense of community, like they belonged as a part of our organization. And it was beyond just, it was about relationships, right? It wasn't just about monetary or time. It was about building those relationships and that sense of community within our organization, because we both had that shared goal.
And coincidentally, this Saturday, I will be going to a retirement community in Montgomery County to talk about the book, or a book reading and book conversation. This is a retirement community, and you're absolutely correct. So one of the things I'm with through AARP and others, you're absolutely correct. I got a letter from someone, he was a former U.S. Army person, but about to retire from a big pharma company. He said, Neil, I found your book, and now I decided to go to Panama to serve. So he found a cause, he found a calling to do something. I'm assuming his parents or somebody from Panama. So that's what it is, finding your purpose, whatever that might be, and can fulfill many different desires, loneliness, purpose, having a meaningful life, a combination of it. So absolutely. Yeah.
Well, Neil, if people want to learn more about your book and the work that you do, where can they find you?
It'll be easy. I think just my website is a good source to start, and I'm happy to, if they want to contact me also. The website is my name, neilghosh.org, neilghosh.org, or you can Google my name and Amazon. My book is Do More Good. So you should be able to find me as well.
Amazing. We will make sure to link to all of that in the show notes and on our social media posts. Neil, this has been such a wonderful conversation. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you. And all the best to you.
Hey, before you go, want to watch? Yes, watch the best moments from the Lead with Heart episodes? We're sharing the most powerful highlights and takeaways over on our brand new YouTube channel. Yes, we are on YouTube. Just search for The Savvy Fundraiser on YouTube and hit subscribe so you never miss a moment of insight and inspiration. The link is in the show notes as well. Thanks for listening, and as always, keep leading with heart.